Now, tonight I'm going to tell you 3 stories from the Bible, 3 stories from our life in the world, and then we're going to kind of see how the lines converge. But I'm going to need some help from the people toward the front. Let's see. Can you hold on to this for me? Just hang on to that. All right, perfect. Perfect. And let's see. Will you hold on to this? I'll need it from you in a little bit, so, enjoy. And, okay, let's see. Don't eat my bread, but, let's see. How about right here? That's good. Okay, thank you. Now, before we go too much farther, we need to watch this video.
How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
I need my globe. The text Kelly read, she read the second half, but the first half says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Through this Word, this divine spark, all things were made. Without him, nothing that was made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. This Word was in the world, and though the world was made through it, the world did not recognize it. The Word, this spark of life, God, was in the world. And though the world was made through God, the world did not recognize God. And the Word became flesh and made its dwelling among us. Now, for all of you who are, spend your free time reading theology books and studying Greek and Hebrew, you know that this is the exciting part? Just me? Okay. The Word became flesh and made its dwelling among us. That word dwelling, it's actually an English translation of a Greek word, which is a Greek throwback to a Hebrew word. Now, when you look at some of the other stories this is referencing, it's referring back to the book of Exodus, where the people of God were wandering around living in tents, and they made a tent for God. Now, this tent, it did not go on the edge of town. This tent went right in the center. It was called the tabernacle. The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us, because God is not content to remain far away. The word incarnation means to put on flesh. God was not content to remain as a disembodied spirit, but God wanted to put some skin on. And this God, this Word, this divine spark of life was in the world. And though the world was made through God, the world didn't always recognize God. Are there ever times when we fail to recognize God in the world around us? Second story, hang on to that again. In the book of Luke, chapter 2, it tells us of some shepherds who were keeping watch over their flocks by night, when suddenly an angel appeared. The angel said, and I have these lines well rehearsed from my years of Christmas pageants, "Fear not, for I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be for all people, for unto you this day is born a newborn baby in the city of Bethlehem." So the shepherds, being shepherds, first they freaked out because when an angel just shows up suddenly, it's kind of freaky. Second, they decided, let's go see this thing that has happened. But the angel gave them a little bit more advice. The angel said, "And this is how you will recognize him. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. And this is how you'll recognize him." Sometimes we need someone or something to help us recognize God with us. Third, take my cup of my bread, thank you. There were 2 friends traveling home a long journey from Jerusalem to Emmaus. On this iconic Emmaus road, these two friends are met by a stranger. The stranger says, "What are you talking about?" They ask, "Haven't you heard the things that have been happening in Jerusalem these past days?" "What things? Tell me." "Well, there was this guy, and we thought he was the hope for all of Israel and all of the world, and we really had our whole life invested in following him, but then they killed him." Now, spoiler alert, this takes place 3 days after these events, Easter. The stranger says, listen. There are a few things you need to understand a bit differently about the work of this Messiah that you were following. And this stranger, second spoiler alert, it's really Jesus. This stranger starts telling these two friends all about who the Messiah was and was come to be. This light that shines in the darkness, that the darkness can never overcome. And these two friends and the stranger, who's not a stranger, they get to Emmaus, and the stranger's all like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep on going," which is really the coy way of saying, "I'd love to come in for a bite to eat." And so the two friends are like, "Hey, come on in for a bite to eat." And so they sit down together, and it's over this meal. The stranger takes bread and breaks it. And the text tells us it's in the breaking of the bread, and they recognized him. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. This is how you will recognize him. And they recognized him. Now, there's a few words we could use to sum up all three of these stories. One of them is a Hebrew word, back to Hebrew class for all of us. Repeat after me, Emmanuel. Now, the Hebrew word Emmanuel is actually two different Hebrew words put together to make one word. The first word is Imanu, which means with us. And the second one, El, is the Hebrew word for God. So you put them together, Emmanuel, and you get God with us. This story, this poem of the Word becoming flesh. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world doesn't always recognize him. This is a poem about Emmanuel. These angels and the shepherds, sending these young shepherds off to the center of town to find this newborn Messiah. God with us, Emmanuel. These two friends walking along a road with a stranger, discovering there is something sacred in the face of this stranger. Emmanuel, God with us. Now, another word we could use for these three stories is actually the word of the day in the church, epiphany. Epiphany is not just those aha moments of ideas that inventors have. Epiphany is a season of the church year, from Advent to Christmas to Epiphany. Today is the beginning of Epiphany. Epiphany is a season of light, because it's a season when we remember the Magi who traversed afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. The light of that star led them to see the child Christ. Now, these Magi, they weren't from Jesus' hometown. They weren't even from Jesus' same country. These were people who had eyes to see something, even though it was far away. They could see God. Their eyes were opened to see God with us. What would it look like for us to have epiphany eyes and open them to see that Jesus is a moonwalking bear? Sometimes we spend our lives counting the passes that the team in white is making, and we completely miss that God is with us. Now, 3 more stories. I need my globe back again. A few weeks ago, I went with a group from Middle to the Rockaways. There it is. We went there to help put on a Christmas celebration. We had 2 vans full of people and gifts we were bringing. We had new toys we were donating. We were volunteering at a Christmas extravaganza that was being put on. And then there was the 2 vans that went out to deliver gifts to families, because these families were still continuing to rebuild and repair from the devastation from Hurricane Sandy over a year ago. So we were going out, some of us in costume. My van had a Mrs. Claus and a giant snow person, and I was just wearing an elf hat and my ukulele. I was wearing more than that. Get really awkward. So we were going out in our vans. We would get to a corner. We'd make a phone call to the family and say, hi, we're here from the Secret Sandy gift thing. I never made the phone calls. I don't know what it was called. Gloria and Denise were there. They can probably tell you. We would tell them we were there, see if the family was home. So the parents knew what to look for. But the kids, the minute they see Mrs. Claus and a giant snow person walking down the street with a box full of gifts, they know something's going on. So here we were, groups from middle, bringing this light with us to them. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. Now, you would think, as a pastor, I'd be ready for these things, but I wasn't. I was like, okay, we're going to bring this goodness to them. But I was so pleasantly surprised the moments I would see these children's faces light up, hearing the stories from the families in the ways they are continuing to support one another and recover. And in those moments, I realized that I wasn't bringing this light to them, but they were bringing this light to us because God was already there. And I just didn't always know how to recognize it. Next story. Sometimes we need a little help recognizing God with us. Now, I don't know about you, but I tend to live a slightly fast-paced life. I also talk in a fast-paced way. I always have more ideas than I know what to do with. They're usually ending up on some podcast or website or new Lego set somewhere. But sometimes I need a way to recognize the present moment because God is not waiting for me in the future, but God is here right now in the present moment. So my partner and I decided to get tattoos one day. You're going, oh, how romantic. No, how painful. Come on, people. Those things hurt. We decided on our wrists to get a labyrinth tattooed. So we have a 7-circuit labyrinth. And I'm pretty sure that when I itch it, she can feel it. We got it there. And for me, this tattoo is a reminder of Epiphany, a reminder of Emmanuel. For me, it's a reminder of a simple phrase, smile, breathe, and go slowly. Now, the smiling I do quite often, the breathing I do quite automatically, but the going slowly, I needed to put that one on my body to remind myself to be right here, because God is right here. And when I spend my life living someplace else, I might miss out on the God who's always right here. I need an angel to remind me how to recognize God with me. And third, these are the elements that you often see in a church: a cup and bread. At middle, we are quick to remind you that the table that is set with this cup of blessing and this bread of life is a table where there is room for all. But I want to remind you of one other thing. All of us who gather in this space, we don't just come to take a cup and bread, often known as communion or Eucharist. We come as living Eucharists. This word Eucharist in the Greek, it means good gift. And it's a good gift that is poured out and broken open. How many times do you spend time with the people around you, pouring yourself out and breaking yourself open? You are a Eucharist. Because the Word became flesh, and the Word has never stopped becoming flesh. I'm convinced that in our ever-changing world, the Word needs to become fresh, and you are the expressions of love and justice and grace and peace in the world around us. So the invitation is simple: to open your eyes and see that God has always been here. To open your epiphany eyes and to discover that even though you might spend your time counting the passes that one of the teams is making, may you have eyes that can see the moonwalking bear that's been here the entire time. Grace and peace to us all. Amen.